Okay, one of my favorite things about this story is you two have never created a physical products. You're obviously, we're all users of physical products, but that's not expertise that you had like you shared. And I think physical products are still a massive opportunity, especially for creators. Because it's such a unique group of people. A lot of people don't understand us. They don't really get why we do what we do, how we work, and all of that. So I think everyone in this room, I think the thing that I want to focus on is you all have the capacity to do something similar. So I'd love to hear your questions. I'm going to kind of filter them, and then we're going to lead a little conversation here for 15 or 20 minutes. I would ask that you please don't share your life story. Sometimes these things can be a little awkward. People stand up, they start sharing a bunch of stuff. If you do that, I'm going to politely cut you off, and then we're going to move on to questions. So I just want to set expectations properly. With that said, does anyone want to open us up with a question about physical products, SwitchPod, the process that Caleb and Pat followed, or anything else? Let's start here. We're going to do mics. We are nailing this so far.
All right. When you guys first launched on Kickstarter, I noticed 60 days, and it felt like a really long time to me. I'm curious, as you guys look back, would you have done a shorter period of time? Do you think 60 days was good?
60 days was the most we could do, and I scoured for advice on what to do. A lot of people said 30 days. People have campaign fatigue and that sort of thing. But if we did 30 days, the next 30 days, we would have done nothing. So I was like, why not just have the long campaign? And I had launch fatigue personally, because I worked more in January than I think I've ever worked in my entire life to get stuff ready for the launch. And so it gave us some time to regroup. And it also gave us time to go to different cities, and I could show it to different people. And we had that booth at the conference at the very end of the campaign almost. So, I don't think there's a right answer for every Kickstarter campaign, but for us, having it be longer was better because every day we were still making sales. And we made way more during the campaign than the day after the campaign.
So a follow-up to that would be, is there something that you're going to be able to do now because you went 60 days instead of 30 or something shorter? Like, did it unlock anything new for you or more production or anything like that?
I think more than anything, it unlocked new relationships because since the campaign was up and since it was successful and since it was getting featured on different places, and obviously since Peter McKinnon mentioned it, it gave us access to other people who saw Peter talk about it and then would go, oh, you guys are the SwitchPod guys, right? And going to events that were happening during the campaign, like Social Media Marketing World, wouldn't have happened if it was a little bit shorter. But I guarantee you the graph would have been basically the same in terms of a ton up front, a big lull, and then a ton right at the end. And that's just how, even in the digital space, it's the exact same way. When I run a 7-day launch, day 1, it's great, and then it's a lull, and day 6 and 7, that's when you get the most sales. So it was interesting to see those same correlations between digital and physical.
So what I take away from that is, in some ways, it's the mindset it put you all in, because you were in launch mode for 60 days, whereas if it's 30, you go into production mode, and now you're not still promoting it right now, because you don't have anything to sell anymore. You got to wait until it comes out. So for you, it was like, these 60 days, this is what I'm doing, and then I'll get back to all the other stuff, but right now, that's all I care about. Yeah. That's really interesting.
And I think it was a little unusual because a lot of Kickstarters that you see have not just the main product, right, but they have all these different kinds of versions of that product and all these other pledge levels and all that stuff. And we had seen other companies that we got inspired by, like Peak Design, for example, who have run very successful Kickstarter campaigns, but their pledge list is like 20 items long. And we made a clear decision up front, and this is definitely coming from Tom and Dan from Studio Neat. They basically told us in the green room over there last year, just have one SKU. Just have one product, focus on getting it to your backers, and things will start to happen from there. You can add the more colors later. You can add the different sizes later, but you're going to complicate things so much for every new thing that a person can choose. Just have one.
Yeah. I find it funny that y'all were beginners, and now you already speak the lingo, like SKU. Just have one SKU, SKUs.
Do you know what SKU stands for?
Yeah, but I want to see if you know.
Okay, anyways, we digress. Next question.
I don't know either.
Hi, I would love to know how you guys met, but more importantly, how you decided you were a great fit to partner, considering that it was something so new for both of you.
Great question. So Kayla and I share the same humor. I mean, really. I mean, that's part of it, right? Like, you just have a good vibe with the person that you're with. I think it could have been very simple to go, okay, I'm the visionary and he's the integrator, or that, and that's important. There's a book called Rocket Fuel that talks all about that, and that's extremely important. But I think we had such a long time working relationship with the stuff on Smart Passive Income. Caleb was my videographer for 5 years. And so we have a language already, we have like a relationship already, and so we knew that it would work out really well. Plus the dad jokes, just we feed off of each other.
Waj bombs.
Oh, dude, they're so good. But yeah, I mean that's how we knew. That's how we knew. I think it's very difficult to form a partnership with somebody who you don't know yet.
Where did you meet?
Conference?
8 years ago at FinCon in Chicago.
At a conference.
Place like this.
Yeah.
That's Nathan shared last night at the opening party. That's where he and I met. That's how we ended up working together on ConvertKit. So conferences are, you're probably sitting next to the person who will be on stage with you someday. Let's go back there in the jacket. We're gonna have a multi-toss here, a relay.
I love this box too. Somebody at an event was like, "Hey, it's kind of hard to get Q&A from an audience. Hey, I'm going to build a solution for that." So
Here,
this is
I'll
like
take that from you.
You know what I mean? It's like
This
a
is a
version of
friction,
that.
yeah.
So that's cool. Yeah, back there.
You'll be next.
You mentioned a little about the costs of making it even before the Kickstarter. I'm just curious, what are some lessons you learned from there? Was it a lot more than you thought it would be, and how did you manage that before the actual Kickstarter?
Okay, so I'm gonna like reframe a little bit. So costs with physical products, that's the biggest difference to me from a business model standpoint for physical products and digital products. Beautiful thing about digital products is we can all start today and sell it next week as long as we can get enough words on the page or video out or whatever. With a physical product, you're making stuff that costs money. You two started from a great place, which is that you had money between the two of you that you could invest. So what were you willing to invest? How did you think about the money you were putting into this? And did you need that back? Do you need it back now that you're on the other side of that? Like how much risk did you take basically financially to do this?
That's a good question. I mean, on the cost, it wasn't like we spent, what was it, like $30,000 before launch basically. We didn't spend that all up front. It was definitely in chunks. In the beginning, we didn't spend very much. More it was just energy and time to create and share. So it took like $0 to create that sketch. It took clearly
0 time.
we could have paid Eric loads more, and it would have probably looked much better. But and maybe one day be on a basketball court or something like that. That would be really cool. But anyway, the cardboard cutout cost $0, right, to get the shape and feel of it. And then the first 3D prints were less than $100. And we figured, okay, if we share this 3D print with people and they think it's like the most idiotic thing in the world, and they're telling us that, well, guess what? We don't need to spend any more money, right? So we kept getting that green light and that green light. But I did have in my personal account like money set aside for this. And in my life, I set aside 10% of my time to experiment and try and take risks. And in my bank account, I do the same thing. I have money set aside for different kinds of interesting and high-risk investments. And that's because I like to take chances, but I want it to be controlled. So I'm not like putting all of my life savings into this, but I have, a little bit of money to play with such that if I were to lose it all, I'd be totally fine. And that, I think, allowed me to have the sort of continuation of, yes, let's keep going. Okay, let's keep putting money into this. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, and most of that money was paying people to help us. Like, yeah, the prototypes got expensive towards the end as we finalized the product and wanted it to be of a high quality material, but most of that money was paying product and the people to make the prototypes. So we were paying for help.
Yeah.
Right. I'm trying to imagine how much it would cost, both with time and money, to go to an engineering school to understand how to do these CAD drawings, and then, you know what I mean?
And then learn Mandarin like TFN, the
no,
product
seriously,
does.
Yeah, because the team in China is, we wouldn't know how to communicate with them.
Okay, so this was an investment, and what I find impressive about this is, number one, they were already successful. Like, let's just call it what it is. They were in a privileged position that they put themselves in to be able to take risks like this. So it wasn't rent money. This was money you had systematically set aside to be able to continue to invest in your business, and you created that opportunity for yourself. But the system there is what I would take away to answer the question is, Pat has a system in his business for managing money that's coming in, and he systematically says, I'm gonna put this money over here so that I can create more opportunity later. And if I'm sitting, well, I am sitting here, and my lesson I'm gonna take away is, and one of the things we do at ConvertKit as well, is we think in money systems. How do we build a system so that we don't have to trust ourselves to make individual decisions? We know the system's gonna work for us and the money's gonna go where it needs to go. Ramit Sethi has a great book on a personal money system, and if you like went and read that book and thought about it in the context of their businesses, I think you would get some of the principles that I would at least coach you on from a financial perspective here. We're right here.
My question supports that on the operations side. I'm curious if you both had a system or if it was developed as you were moving through this process in your existing businesses to be able to free you up to be able to work on this project, or was it like, I'm just working around the clock, family who? It doesn't sound like that's what it was, so I'd be curious what you went into the project doing and then what evolved to free you up from your role, or maybe you weren't freed up. I don't
Okay,
know.
so real quick. So you have a video business with
Yes.
clients. You also produce YouTube and content. You produce a ton of content, obviously, which everyone knows you for, and you have courses and a team and everything.
And kids.
So, well, yes, obviously, and family, who we love dearly. What did you do on that side of things while you were doing this? Did you just like, hey, I'll be back, or was there something going on in the background too?
I mean, my client business is cyclical, so it gets really busy and then there's lulls. And we launched right after the holidays in late January, and there's always a lull for me in December and January. And so I knew I had more time to put towards that. But for the majority of the project, the first year, we might spend an hour in a month on it. You know, so it's kind of like a snowball, and it just like kept getting bigger and bigger, and time kept getting spent on it as we got closer to the date. And then after we launched, then it was more of like, okay, how much time do I want to put towards this compared to the rest of my business?
And for me, I think I'm very blessed to have an amazing team to help support me to keep the business running without me having to be there all the time. Thank you, team. Some of them are here. And in addition to that, like I've always allowed myself for time to experiment and try things, right? Like the 10% of just whatever and 90% of doing the things I need to do. I think Gary Vee talks about that a lot. He does 90% of his stuff on the stuff that he knows works, and then he spends 10% of his time on brand new platforms that nobody's ever been on before. And this was my version of that.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, yes, over time as the snowball started to get bigger and more of our time was required for, especially during the Kickstarter launch and the traveling and all that stuff when that was going down, a big part of it was being very honest and upfront with my wife about what was happening so that there weren't any surprises because I want to stay married. You know what I'm saying? So that was a big thing, and just realizing that life is not ever 100% perfectly balanced, right? Life is back and forth. Just how do we make sure it doesn't go too far to one side or too far on the other? And for me, that's making sure that the other side's taken care of while I may be on this side, and then I can go to do something with the family only on the other side of it. So like literally after the launch, I had a vacation planned with my family so that my wife had something that she could also look forward to on the other side of it, and that's very, very important to me.
I think the other thing I'd call out about both of you, we're going to do 3 more questions. I'm going to go right back all the way in the back first, in the white back there. But one thing that I think is cool about both of you, and that I think is true about many of us in the room, is you integrate your life pretty well. You and your wife work together quite a bit, Caleb. Your son was a little bit of a part of the campaign. We saw him in some of the videos. And so you kind of bring them along for the ride. And obviously they benefit from it because these businesses support your families. I think it's a really beautiful thing, though. I mean, your son is learning from you in a wonderful way very early in life through this, and I have no doubt you'll do the same as you have a family as well, and your wife participates too. And so it's a family affair in a lot of ways, which makes it fun, and it's not necessarily business or family, which I admire you both for. So I just want to acknowledge that too.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to go all the way in the back row. Can we get a multi-toss microphone back there? Yeah, there's one toss.
It's meant to be thrown.
A second toss to Matt, and one more all the way back. Okay, before you
Touchdown.
ask, I'm going to select the next person as well. So who else has a question? Let's go all the way over here, to be fair. 2 throws, and then I'll pick the last one here in a minute.
Nice
so let's
stuff.
go back there.
Okay, have you found resources that talk about materials? Because I'm looking at making a different version of something that I have available for my students that out of different materials so that I can ship it more easily. And I'm having a difficult time finding any kind of really source that talks about the benefits of different types of materials, the lightweightness, the flexibility, etc. Have you found a particular resource for that.
Okay, so in the 4-Hour Chef, Tim Ferriss talks about the DIS method for learning a new skill, and the D stands for deconstruction. And so if we're talking about making physical products, the materials that go into it are a major part of the deconstructed skill set.
Absolutely.
So how did you go about learning about the physical material aspect of this, and where should someone start if they want to get into it?
We didn't. We found somebody. Honestly, like we have an engineer that helped develop it, and then we have people on the product team that make physical products, and they are the materials experts. To the extent of what we did with the material was they would make something and we would hold it and be like, this is great, this is bad. Like that, honestly, that's how much I know about it. They knew, oh, if we put glass beads in this plastic material and this is what it'll cost, but I don't know that stuff.
Yeah.
We didn't try to learn that stuff.
I mean, I asked about some of that stuff because I wanted to know the strength of various kinds of materials, and they sent this like graph with all these things that I was just like,
elasticity and
I don't need to know this right now. I just need to know how much is this going to cost, and will it be strong like we want it. And going back to that, remember that one sheet we had of like all the things it had to have? I would recommend that you would create like a must-have list, and then find somebody who can go, hey, tell me all the kinds of materials that fit this parameter. And then how much does each of them cost?
How much did you all pay that expert?
It was just a share of the manufacturing process, and it's a very small percentage. And we're very lucky to also have developed a relationship with this company, Prouduct.com. It's a back and forth sort of thing. So it's beyond just money. We mentioned them in this presentation, and they know that we're going to, as we become successful, help them become even more successful too. So I think we got a good deal because of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that again speaks to the power of knowing people, right? And if I could go back into time in the DeLorean and talk to my younger self, I would say, Pat, please meet as many people as possible, because you never know when that relationship will turn into something, or when you might need that person's help. And this is one thing I do in my life, is I spend time every single month going back into my text messages, scrolling all the way to the bottom, and just connecting with people who I haven't connected with in a while.
Yeah.
With no agenda other than to just see how they're doing. Because one day, you might need to reach out to them and ask for something.
Okay, so I'll translate that to Prouduct. Sounds like a great partner that they've found. Pat's worked really hard to have a lot of influence that he can kind of wield to get great deals. The deal they got is not going to be the deal you get, but they're probably still a really great partner to start your research with. That's how I would interpret that for you. Okay, let me pick the last question, and then we'll grab this one over here. We'll go there. So you'll be our last one. Yes.
Hey, y'all. My question has to deal with the emotional and psychological side of launching a product. So you have digital products and physical products. Was that any different? Personally, I can get into my own head about anything I create. So when I feel that green light, I'm really just start telling myself it's a yellow one, and eventually I stop.
Okay.
So how do you stay green, and how do you fight off your fear to actually create something and finish it?
That's a good question. I'll add to this. I think as creators, we tie our identities to what we make. And so I'll twist it a little bit and make sure I don't completely mess up the question, but is there a difference in your emotional attachment to a physical product as compared to a digital product? Does that get at some of what you're asking?
Well, you did a lot of face-to-face with people. So was the fear of rejection greater having to show them a physical product than a digital product?
Okay, perfect, cool.
I think for me, the request to get feedback sooner was greater, because the product was that much more sort of just in your hands, and you can get into a lot more different kinds of conversations quicker versus, hey, I'm creating an online course, look at this outline, can you tell me what you think of it, do you think it would help you? There's an instant whether this works or not for a person with a physical product, and I thought that was really neat. There's also that instant gratification when you share it and they know immediately that it's something that can help them versus, again, say something like an online course, which can be very, very life-changing, but not in that instant as well. But I definitely felt the same kinds of emotions with wanting to make sure that it was helping people. And it just so happened that because it was a physical product, I could get in front of people face-to-face more because I wanted to show them and get that real gut reaction.
And for me, a lot of the videos we show to people checking it out are my personal friends. And so I wasn't afraid of, first of all, filming them checking it out. But second of all, when we were at VidCon and other places, I showed it to a lot of strangers that I'm never going to see again. So I wasn't afraid of that either. So I don't know how it relates to digital. I think it's best to get feedback from friends for a while until it gets to a point where you're welcoming strangers to it, because maybe you've built up a little bit of a shell. Or you're more confident in what you've made as well before strangers see it.
That's interesting. So kind of staging that process of getting in front of people who, I got this great advice from a mentor one time. He said, give permission to specific people to give you feedback and ignore everyone else. And I love that because it allows you to say, I take feedback from you and I take it seriously because you know me and you'll call me out. But for everyone else that doesn't have the context, I'm not doing that. And so it kind of sounds like you did a version of that where you went to the people you trust to give you that good feedback right up front and then went to further and further out with the circle.
Right. I will say it hasn't been all unicorns and rainbows though. There have been people who have created videos and articles about how this is the dumbest product in the world. And we can clearly see that, well, it's not for you. And the people who know it's for them, they know it immediately. And I've had to grow a thicker skin over time and realize that a lot of, especially the ones who are very rude and extreme about it, oftentimes those are coming from a place of hurt and they're just targeting you because you just so happen to be open and vulnerable. And I think it's a big lesson for creators is that, hurt people. And that's a big thing that I've had to learn. Hurt people. And it's a lesson I teach my kids. And it's a lesson I have to continue to tell myself sometimes.
Yeah. The nice thing is you have $415,000 of proof that a lot of people really love it. So that's cool.
Yeah, but it's funny because people see that, right? And you've had people go, oh my gosh, like your life is going to be so much different now. You guys are rich, like you guys are successful now. But what's the truth?
We are reinvesting every single dollar back into it. Yeah.
And the only change is we have another green light and we're continuing the process and we're loving it the whole way. And I think that's the other cool thing is that if we ever just hate what we're doing now, we can just stop.
Yep.
But we're not even close to that yet.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, last one of the day. We were right there, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned about it's not all unicorns and rainbows. Actually, my question was going to be about that. What were your toughest or hardest moments? And how did you pull yourself through it? Or what was your most frustrating thing? Or was there a day that you just wanted to quit?
So maybe let's do one moment each. And I'd love to know, maybe jointly, after you each share your one, if there was a moment between the two of you where it was particularly hard doing this together.
I think the hardest thing for me was just like to lesson 10, being patient with the process. I'm so, especially with a great team, just like things can happen instantly on the digital space. But in the physical space, like, dude, it's just like, oh my gosh, like any little, and plus that influencing how the product gets changed. Because sometimes I was like, I don't want to make a change right now, even though I probably should, because I know it's going to take forever to get to the next step. And that just like messed with my head, being so like digital for 10 years. But also always going back to, okay, we want to make this product great for the people who need our help. And that was cool.
Do you remember one change that you were like, no?
Yeah, like changing the magnets from silver to black. And it's just like, now we got to find a whole new magnet company to supply these things at a certain thing. And like the paint doesn't scratch off. And it was just like 2 weeks on just magnet colors.
It's worth it.
That highlights why that would be frustrating.
If I see another magnet.
I don't know if there's one major one, because I feel like we've tried to push through them all, whether it's cease and desist on trademark or who knows what. Like, we're confident in the product and the tribe that's now behind it, and we'll push through it. So there's not one big one, I don't think, for me.
I think actually, now that made me think of another one.
Pat can have two, I'll give him mine.
Okay, thanks. So we've had people come up to us and share quite openly that, it was only because we pay these influencers that they are the ones that promoted it for us. And we know that's not true. We know we built these relationships, and it just scares me that that's people's default, right? And I think that if you can add value, there can be wins for everybody, every party involved. And it just frustrates me because I see a lot of those people who are saying that, they're also creators who are struggling. And so I'm like, there's an interesting pattern here. So I always go to relationships first, serve first, right? Serve first and you will be rewarded.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's golden nuggets in here. Hurt people, serve first, start with relationships, take it one step at a time, find a valued partner, show up in places where you can find the kind of people who will end up doing these kinds of things together. You two are gold. Thanks for being here today. Thanks to all of you for listening. We're going to wrap up, bring Alexis back up. Well, let's give him a round of applause.